sometimes I make a video covering a game that gamers have strong opinions on, and that is always an interesting yet terrifying experience, because one wrong word or honest take that doesn't quite align could really annoy a lot of people. Hey everyone, Kane from VividChim here, and ignore the hair, I know it looks bad today, but that is not what the video is about. No, today's video is about me playing the next game in my long line of Resident Evil titles that I've tasked myself to play, and I'm actually writing this segment and doing this before I've sat down to play the game, so you're gonna be seeing me in a different shirt throughout the video or when I come back at the end of it. But yeah, I'm writing this beforehand, and this game is beloved by a lot of people, so I'm quite anxious to see how I think it holds up. So what is my opinion on one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time? Well, let's find out as I ask Resident Evil 4, how bad can it be? Jumping ahead from the radioactive ashes of Raccoon City, Resident Evil 4 takes place in the year 2004 and finds us rejoining everyone's favourite rookie Leon S. Kennedy, now a US government agent, as he's sent on a mission to Spain to rescue the president's kidnapped daughter. When getting there, he is confronted with a village that belongs to Los Iluminados, a mysterious cult of individuals infected by Las Plagas, a mind-controlling parasite that is now inhabiting both Leon and the president's daughter Ashley. Leon then has to cure himself and Ashley, defeat Los Iluminados, and escape the village with Ashley, all before it's too late. The story is really cheesy if you hadn't have guessed, but it is genuinely great stuff. It really captures that old B-action movie style of the classic games, just with a bit of a larger budget. The performances, whilst not the strongest, grew on you throughout the game, and honestly, even Ashley, who everyone told me was super annoying going into this game, was just fine. Maybe it's because she didn't get grabbed a lot in my playthrough, but I found her character pretty endearing by the end of the game. Now, video game plots have come a long way in the 15 years since RE4, but it really does hold up story-wise, as do a lot of these games, funnily enough. There's something just so ageless about how dumb the Resident Evil games are, and I kind of love it. Resident Evil 4 being 15 years old is going to mean that even with the many re-releases, the game doesn't look good. Let's call a spade here. The game looks dated, and while certainly not terrible, saying it holds up is just kind of wrong. It is good enough to play, and the models aren't bad, though they are a little plasticky and smooth. It could use an update though, certainly. Also, RE4 comes from a time where everything needed to be brown in a video game, and thus, well, everything is brown. Even the fiery lava pits that you come across are, well, surrounded by brown. I'm not saying it should be super colourful by any stretch, but something a little more visually engaging could really spice it up a little and help complement the atmosphere, which I think is one of the best things RE4 has going for it. It combines tension with action really nicely, providing that balance that some RE games tend to forget about. The tension is sometimes undercut by some of its more frustrating elements, but overall, sequences like the village at the start of the game can cause genuine panic in the player. The audio of RE4 accompanies the tension really well, with the sudden jolts of music amping up the oncoming Illuminados. Now, I'd actually like to see how a remake would handle this, as the newer games tend to be quieter overall, reserving music for more imposing enemies and set pieces. Now, I'm not saying that would work in this RE4, but I would be very interested in seeing how a remake and using their new audio style could mix up the dynamic a little bit. The gameplay for me was honestly a real mixed bag. The controls, well, a little better than the tank controls of the previous era, hadn't fully developed into the newer, more clean and nice controls of the modern games. Instead, RE4 has a weird hybrid of the two styles, feeling like a transition. The right stick controls the camera a little, but the left stick still has the familiar tank control feel, though not as intense, meaning it also kind of controls the camera. It's strange. It made it a little awkward to adjust, but not as awkward as the combat and combat controls. In Resident Evil 4 you cannot move and shoot, which feels a little archaic, but does add some nice tension when you're being chased by the hordes of Illuminados and you know you can't just stop the gun them down, especially when Ashley is there. Then we have the actual control scheme for the combat, which meant that the right trigger was to aim your gun and then X was to shoot it whilst A was to reload it. The left trigger meanwhile was to bring out your knife. This was very clunky and led to some major frustration for me, especially when I'd accidentally fire off a shot instead of trying to reload. The control scheme just felt backwards to me. I did really like the quick draw knife though, something which subsequent Resident Evil games have implemented extremely well, especially on a mouse and keyboard, which is fantastic. And this game is actually really good to play on a mouse and keyboard in general, apart from the main reason why I decided to play with a controller throughout most of my playthrough. QuickTime events. That's right, this is from the early stages of that era of games that was dedicated to doing interactive cutscenes, so QTEs were everywhere, and this game is no different. And my god, did it suck. Mostly. Button combos were really simple and didn't diverge a whole lot, but had their shining moments of frustration, primarily when you had to jump and then climb by rapidly tapping X, something which seemingly required Evo level skills, or in my case, changing the way I held the controller to even keep up. It was incredibly fast. This leads me to the boss battles in RE4, which are honestly mostly lame. The best ones I can think of are the battle with Del Lago on the boat, which is really fun, and Chief Mendez, which is a nice challenge. Then we have every other boss fight, which was just... The G3 was especially miserable, being just a bullet-spongy puzzle-based boss fight with QuickTime events. It was terrible. Meanwhile, the Krauser fight was actually brilliant, up until you actually fought him in his boss form. The multi-stage attacks, the mix of CQC and ranged, and even the QTE cutscene was great. Then he grows a Plagueis arm, can teleport around, has a shield, is quicker than you, and can knock you off an edge, and you have to beat him and escape in under 3 minutes. This sucked. Or it would suck. This is where my favourite character from RE4 comes in, the shopkeeper whose classic question of "what are you buying?" kept spirits high. In Resident Evil 4, Leon can frequently come across this mysterious dealer who sells a variety of items for the money you can find throughout the game. These items include weapons, weapon attachments, and upgrades, and most importantly for dealing with the miserable bosses, a rocket launcher. Relatively cheap too, so you know, stock up. We also need to discuss Ashley, who I think gets a bunch of needless hate in this game. Yes, you spend a good portion of the game escorting her, but really other than the few sequences where you have to protect her from waves of enemies, the water room especially sucking, it's really not that bad. It's mostly a matter of parking her somewhere, then killing everything else before continuing. Really, it's not that big of a deal. Resident Evil 4 hasn't aged well, but it hasn't aged badly either. Whilst it isn't the zenith of absolute perfection that I'm sure it once was, it was perfectly enjoyable and honestly quite good. It's an experience that I would gladly endure again. I think the nostalgia goggles are strong with this one, and whilst I wouldn't go out of my way to say that it is in desperate need of a remake, I think saying that it doesn't need one because the game is perfect is very ignorant to all of the flaws that the game has, especially given how Father Time has caused them to stand out more. Resident Evil 4 is a good game, but given the proper treatment in a remake, if one is to happen, I think it could quite easily reclaim its title as one of the greatest video games of all time. What are your thoughts on Resident Evil 4? I would love to discuss this game further with you in the comment section down below. This has been a weird run of games for me to play, honestly. There's a lot of hectic scheduling going around. Some changes have had to be made on the fly. I'm also trying to get healthy whilst doing this, so I'm a bit all over the place. I'm a bit up and down in what I'm doing, but yeah. It's been crazy, it's been a lot of fun, but we're getting close to the end. We've actually had to cancel 2 of the games, being Revelations and Revelations 2. Internet issues have stopped me being able to stream them, and I can't purchase them right now, so that's kind of screwed me over a little bit, but I'll be playing those at a later date. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon.